What if I told you? The greatest prison ever built has no walls, no bars, and yet nearly every human being lives inside it. A prison made not of stone, but of belief, not of chains, but of thought. We walk the corridors of our lives believing we are free, choosing, striving, hoping, never realizing we are sleepwalking through a dream built by society, by conditioning, by centuries of inherited fear. Jiddu Krishnamurti once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Yet most of us spend our lives trying to fit in, desperately adjusting to the expectations of a world that has lost its soul. From birth, we are named, praised, criticized, categorized. We are told what to believe, who to become, and what to want. We confuse knowledge for wisdom, achievement for truth. And in that confusion, the quiet struggle begins, the ache of not knowing why we suffer. We live in the cave of Plato's myth, mistaking shadows for reality. But what happens when we turn around and see the fire? Krishnamurti didn't call for revolution against society. He called for revolution against ourselves, not with violence, not with ideology, but with radical awareness. And that journey begins with one piercing question. Are you awake or just dreaming of being awake? Look closely. Every war, every conflict, every tear shed in silent despair begins with a single act: division. The world is torn, nation against nation, religion against religion, self against self. But where does this fracture begin? Krishnamurti pointed to a quiet culprit hiding in plain sight. Thought, the instrument of knowledge, invention, survival, has become our master. We worship it, trust it, follow its commands without question. But thought, by its very nature, divides. It labels, it compares. It creates time, not just on the clock but in the heart. We say, I am this, not that. I should become something better. One day I will be free, and so we chase futures that never arrive. We escape into ideals that separate us from what is. Thought is a mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, each fragment reflecting a sliver of truth, but never the whole. Science confirms what the mystics long knew: the mind fragments reality. And in that fragmentation we suffer. Imagine looking at a sunset and instantly thinking, I must capture it, share it, analyze it. The moment is gone, dead, replaced by thought. Krishnamurti asked, can you look without the past interfering? To see without naming, judging, or seeking is to touch something sacred. When thought becomes the observer, we live in pieces. But when awareness blooms, the whole is seen. Who are you when no one is watching? Strip away your name, your job, your past, your memories. What remains? We carry the self like an identity card, constantly flashing it to the world. This is who I am. But Krishnamurti asked a dangerous question, one that unravels everything. Is the self real? Or is it merely a story untold by memory, repeated by habit, protected by fear? We say, I think, I feel, I want. But who is this I? Is it a fixed entity, or just a bundle of impressions, echoes of parents, teachers, television, screens? The mystics spoke of a veil, an illusion, Maya. They weren't speaking of the outside world. They were pointing to you. Imagine a wave believing it is separate from the ocean. It has a name, a height, a form, but the moment it claims independence, suffering begins. You are the wave, forgetting the ocean. Krishnamurti shattered the illusion of the inner observer. He said, the observer is the observed. The fear you see is you. The anger, the longing, the jealousy, there is no separation. This is not philosophy. It's a fire that burns the false self to ash, and in the silence that follows, something unspeakable emerges. Not a new identity, but the vastness of being. We are living in the age of information. Data surges through our pockets, our homes, our eyes. We can split atoms, but cannot sit in silence with ourselves. We can reach the stars, but fail to reach one another. This is the great paradox of modernity. We know everything and understand nothing. Krishnamurti saw it coming. He warned of education systems that reward conformity, not clarity. He saw how we produce clever minds, trained to compete, succeed, consume, but not wise hearts. What good is intelligence if it leads only to conflict? What good is progress and if it deepens our sorrow? AI learns faster than any human, but can it love? Can it weep? Can it be aware of its own illusions? We speak of connection, yet we feel more alone than ever. We speak of freedom, yet we are slaves to screens, likes, and algorithms. Krishnamurti said, "A man who is not free is not moral." And freedom, he knew, begins not with action, but with perception. The crisis of our time is not economic, political, or environmental. It is a crisis of consciousness. There is a state of mind that cannot be taught, cannot be forced, cannot be earned. It is not meditation, not concentration. Not escape. Krishnamurti called it choiceless awareness. Imagine watching a storm, not running, not naming it bad or good, but simply witnessing. Imagine sitting with grief, not analyzing it, not suppressing it, but letting it speak in silence. Choiceless awareness is attention without motive. It is seeing without the seeker. It is a flame, not lit by discipline, but by stillness. Krishnamurti refused to give methods, because the moment you apply a method, you've already chosen. You've already brought the past into the present. And in that act, true observation dies. This state is not mystical, it is deeply practical. In choiceless awareness, fear reveals its root and dissolves. Desire shows its movement and fades. The self, built of reactions, melts into pure perception. Mystics across traditions whispered this same truth. The Sufis danced it. The Zen monks sat in it. But Krishnamurti made it radically accessible. Right now, in this breath, in this moment. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to become anything. You only have to see. And in that seeing, the whole structure of illusion begins to burn. Now we reach the precipice. For some, this journey offers peace, but for others, it is terrifying. Because to see truth is to watch everything false begin to die. Krishnamurti warned, truth is a pathless land. There is no method, no teacher, no system to follow, only a great unknowing. And with that freedom comes a silent terror. Without belief, who are you? Without purpose handed down by society, what do you stand on? This is not freedom as comfort, it is freedom as fire. It burns identity, tradition, ideology, leaving only the bare, unconditioned now. This is why so few walk this path. Truth does not coddle, it dismantles, and in that destruction something sacred breathes, but only for those willing to step into the void alone. So, what now? You've walked through the silence of the self. You've watched illusions crumble. You've felt the tremble of freedom's weight. But this is not an ending. Krishnamurti never sought followers. He wasn't a guru. He was a mirror, held up to our deepest fears and most sacred possibilities. The revolution he spoke of isn't on the streets. It's not in the systems or the slogans. It begins in the most intimate place, within your own awareness. No one can walk this path for you, but you are not lost. There is no map, because you are the territory. So as this journey ends, one question remains, echoing through the stillness like a final bell. Are you watching? Or are you still dreaming? In a world more connected than ever before, why does man still feel so alone? Beneath the hum of technology, behind the glass smiles and endless scrolling, there exists a profound silence, a quiet suffering that whispers in the corners of our daily lives. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, but it's there, always there. We have mistaken movement for meaning, progress for peace. We live in towers of steel and information, yet our inner worlds remain fragile, confused, yearning for something we can't quite name. Jiddu Krishnamurti did not offer comfort, he offered clarity. He spoke not as a teacher, but as a mirror, held up to the fractured psyche of humanity. His words are not a balm, but a blade, cutting through illusion. The silent struggle is not new. From the ruins of ancient Rome to the industrial age, man has always fled inward discomfort through outward expansion. But what if the world is not the cause of our suffering? What if it merely reflects the fragmentation within? We begin this journey not by looking outward but inward, into the quiet places we fear to tread. What we find there may not comfort us, but it will awaken us. We are taught to trust thought, to solve, to plan, to achieve. But have we ever stopped to ask, is thought truly our ally? Krishnamurti unveiled a radical truth that thought born of memory and time is mechanical. It cannot touch the eternal, the sacred, or the truly new. Thought is a shadow of yesterday, endlessly recreating what was. In our effort to escape pain, we use thought like a bandage. But thought is the wound. We grieve a loss, and thought replays. The image, the voice, the past, resurrecting sorrow again and again. We fear the future, and thought projects catastrophe. Thus it binds us in psychological time, the endless becoming, the ceaseless search. Eastern traditions whisper the same insight. The Upanishads speak of a state beyond mind. Zen koans unravel the logical. Even modern neuroscience hints that much of thought is reaction, not revelation. So we ask, can a mechanism conditioned by the past bring freedom? Or must we step beyond it entirely? There is a division so subtle, so ingrained, that we rarely even notice it. The divide between the thinker and the thought, the observer and the observed. Krishnamurti shattered this illusion. The observer is the observed, he declared. What does that mean? It means the me watching anger is itself anger. The one judging fear is born of fear. We live in a hall of mirrors where each reflection claims to be real, but there is no separation, no duality. The fragmentation is an illusion created by thought, and within it we chase an endless loop. This insight unravels the foundation of the ego. The self, the image, the internal narrator, all are constructs. They have no independent reality. To see this clearly is not an intellectual exercise. It is a revolution. Quantum physics too hints at this. The observer changes the observed, but this is not about particles. It's about perception. It's about stepping out of the framework that divides. When the observer dissolves, what remains is a choiceless awareness, a seeing without a seer. And in that, the first true glimpse of freedom. From the moment we are born, we are named, categorized, compared. We are shaped not by essence, but by expectation. Society conditions us like clockwork. Schools reward conformity. Religions hand us belief. Nations imprint identity. And all the while, we believe we are choosing. But are we? Krishnamurti saw society not as a savior, but as the extension of human fragmentation. It institutionalizes. Fear, ambition, comparison, it calls it progress. But is it even rebellion is co-opted? The revolutionary becomes the new tyrant. The spiritual seeker becomes the next follower, all within the same conditioned game. History is full of revolutions that changed structures but never consciousness. Ideologies rise and fall, yet human suffering remains. What if real change is not out there? What if the system persists because it mirrors our inner state? To question society is to question the self, and to do that is to stand alone, radically, without affiliation. It is not easy, but it is necessary. If thought cannot end suffering and conditioning only deepens it, then what remains? Krishnamurti pointed to awareness, not effortful, selective attention, but choiceless, passive awareness. A seeing without judgment. A presence without identity. This flame of awareness burns quietly. It does not seek results, it does not compare or control, but it illuminates, and in its light, falsehood falls away on its own. When you look at a tree, a sorrow, a thought, without naming, without analyzing, what happens? There is no observer, just the thing itself, just clarity. In that seeing, fear begins to dissolve. The past loses its grip, and the future ceases to haunt. This is not a method, it is not a practice, it is the end of all methods, a stepping beyond the known, a revolution without ideology, without leader, without movement. It is the birth of intelligence that is not of thought, and it begins now. There is something beyond all of this, beyond suffering, beyond thought, beyond even awareness as we know it. Krishnamurti called it the other, a sacred, untouchable dimension that cannot be approached, only received. It is not a thing, it is not an experience, it is what remains when the known ends. Mystics called it the void, the Tao, the divine. But words fail. Concepts cannot contain it. To step outside the stream of becoming, of seeking, of knowing, this is the true freedom. It is not an escape. It is an arrival. The silent struggle, once faced without escape, becomes the doorway. In suffering seen, completely without resistance, the sacred is revealed, and so we end not with conclusion, but with a question. When all is stripped away, what remains? Perhaps there, in that sacred silence, is the beginning of a new world. What if your suffering is so deeply embedded, you no longer recognize it as suffering? This is not the agony of war or the trauma of disaster. It is subtler, quieter, a background, hum of unease that lives within your thoughts, decisions, and relationships. A tension you no longer question because it has always been there. This is the invisible cage. Jiddu Krishnamurti spoke often of this internal conflict, a psychological violence that masquerades as normal life. He called it the fragmentation of the self, the division between who we are and who we think we should be. We inherit it from our families, our cultures, our religions. We obey it, conform to it, protect it, and in doing so we perpetuate our own suffering. The tragedy is not that we are suffering, it is that we no longer realize we are. There is no rebellion because there is no awareness. We call it ambition, responsibility, morality. But beneath those names lies fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being wrong, fear of being free. And so we ask, if the struggle is silent, how do we begin to hear it? You are not thinking, you are being thought. This isn't poetry, it's the blueprint of your inner architecture. The human mind, Krishnamurti observed, is a structure of accumulated memory. It is built from the past, from words, from images, from experiences. Every thought you have is old. From the moment you are born, you are named, categorized, compared. You are given a religion, a nationality, a gender, an identity. You are taught to seek success, to fear failure, to chase love, to obey authority. And in all of it, you mistake conditioning for choice. The language you speak, the values you hold, the very way you perceive the world, none of it is original. You are a composite, a program running without your awareness. Ancient wisdom traditions knew this. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The moment you name a thing, you cease to see it clearly. Modern science agrees. Neurology confirms that the brain reinforces patterns of thought like grooves in a record. The more you think a thought, the more it thinks you. Truth is a pathless land. These were Krishnamurti's words as he dismantled the very foundation of spiritual authority. No method, no system, no guru can lead you to freedom, because the moment you seek, you are already separate from what you seek. He invited us into something radical. Observation without the observer. Pure perception. Not filtered through memory. Not shaped by desire. Just seeing. This seeing is not a technique. It cannot be practiced. It happens in a flash or not at all. It occurs when the mind is completely still, not because it is forced into silence, but because it sees the futility of its own noise. To observe a tree, a fear, a thought, without naming it, this is to meet reality directly. In that meeting, transformation happens, not slowly, not through time, but instantly, like light dispelling darkness. And in that light, the self, the thinker, the observer, the seeker, dissolves. So we ask, can you look without becoming the looker? We say we want to be free, but do we? Freedom is not comfort. It is not the absence of hardship. It is the absence of illusion. And this is terrifying, because when the known collapses, the self collapses with it. All our beliefs, our identities, our spiritual systems, they act as scaffolding. Without them, who are we? This is why truth is often buried. Not because it is hidden, but because we refuse to see it. We fear the void. We fear the silence beyond the mind. Krishnamurti warned us, organized religion, nationalism, even family loyalty. They are forms of psychological security, and all security breeds fear. Look to history. Socrates was condemned, mystics were silenced, rebels were erased. Not because they lied, but because they spoke truths we weren't ready to hear. Modern psychology calls it cognitive dissonance. Ancient sages called it Maya, the world of illusion. So we ask, are you willing to give up who you are to discover what is? To seek is to remain in bondage. This is the paradox. The seeker becomes the very thing that prevents seeing. The moment you chase enlightenment, you have already divided yourself, the one who is and the one who must become. Krishnamurti saw through this illusion. He knew that the desire to become spiritual is still desire. It is the ego wearing holy clothes. Modern spirituality, with its methods and mantras, often disguises escape as growth. The retreats, the affirmations, the endless healing, they can become a new form of imprisonment, a more pleasant one, but a prison still. Real transformation is not a process. It is a rupture, a death, not of the body, but of the psychological self. And this death cannot be scheduled. It cannot be earned. It comes when the seeking stops, when the mind no longer clings, when awareness simply is. So we ask, can you stop searching and just see? When all authority has fallen away, what remains? Not chaos, not confusion, but clarity. Krishnamurti rejected followers, rejected being followed, because truth, he said, must be discovered fresh, in your own seeing, in your own light. This is the essence of intelligence. Action born not from ideology,